Greetings crew and welcome to the Shine Wellbeing Veg Patch. Here are my top 5, gosh I wish I'd known this when I started way back in the day, tips to your very own thriving patch. And I can't wait to share them with you because these are going to be time savers and game changers that are going to make your thriving garden experience so much easier. I wish I'd done them the very first time I started my first patch. Let's go. Okay, so tip number 1 is grow what you love to munch. If you don't love munching it, you're probably not going to love growing it, and it's probably going to go to waste, which is very unmotivating. There's nothing worse than spending money on something that you end up throwing into the bin. So, think about your fridge at the end of the week, and you might have some leftover bits and pieces in the bottom of the veg drawer, and there's some slimy carrots or something like that. All that goes. All of that goes. Your fridge will never be the same again when you grow what you love to munch. And you make a list of what it is that you tend to spend the most on in your shopping in terms of produce. What are you spending a week on carrots? What are you spending a week on kale or lettuces or that type of thing? Work that out and then prioritize your list according to what you're already spending your money on. Then go and get your seeds or get your seedlings, and if it's the right time of year, shove them in the ground, give them a little love, and before you know it, you'll be enjoying the freshness of your very own produce straight from your backyard. So when it comes to your grow what you love to munch, consider corn. If you eat corn, and most of us do, it's so easy, and really there's no effort to growing your corn. If you give them a good bit of soil to work from, you're going to get some lovely fresh produce just like this. So don't waste any time. Get your hands dirty, get your list in a place, get your plants and get them in the ground. Make your weeds work for you. So any weeds and waste that you've got in your patch need to go back in to create more bountiful energy to bring you the produce so that you can munch and enjoy everything that you're growing. So if you have a garden, you're going to have weed and you're going to have waste. And some of that is just going to be offcuts, waste that's sort of just come and dropped off naturally as part of the plant growing, which is perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with it. And you can use a chop and drop method where you chop that up and throw it directly back onto your garden beds. Personally, I don't use that method in the Shine Wellbeing patch purely because if there is disease with those plants, I'm spreading it around in my garden. So I just generally use the worm kitchen and nothing to do to it, just toss it in there, depending on what else I've got here. So what's this? An old bit of dahlia leaf that can go in. Scraps from the corn aren't going to go in there. It's too cellulose. It's got too much fiber in that material. It'll take a long time to break down. Worm kitchens are predominantly used for small weed waste and for just, rotten leaves and bits and pieces like that. So stuff like this, see, straight off of the choco plant, it's had better days. I don't leave that on the plant. I actually just cut it off and then throw it in there. Keeps the patch looking fresh. Stops those dying leaves from sucking life out of the plant, and it feeds the worms. So it's a win for everybody. So know that no matter who you are and how neat of a gardener you might be, you're always going to have weeds and you're always going to have waste, and so you need to have methods to manage that. Turning weeds into feed. It is that simple. So don't stress out. You get weeds, not the end of the world. It happens. It happens to all of us. But if you've got systems to manage that, it'll mean that you'll get onto those weeds far sooner than if you don't. And if you get onto the weeds when they're little, they're super easy to manage. But if you let them get too big, that's a whole other story. And so I use a different system when my weeds get out of control. I don't actually put them into the worm kitchens, because the worm kitchens are designed for more sort of smaller material. You know, you want a fast turnover here. We don't want to be having material sitting in there for months and months and months. You know, what I put in a week usually has started to really break down and be almost gone by, within another week passing. So totally worth using, but not for your big stuff. So I'll show you how I use my big weeds and how I turn them into feed. This is where they go when I do get large volumes of weeds that I think are not something that I want to put into the worm kitchens, because they're either too large, take up too much space, they're too fibrous, so they're going to take too long to break down and get a turnover or some value out of their nutrients. Or they might be a little invasive, so I'm concerned that they might spread a little bit. So then I use this, and this is the Weed Brew. Come and have a look. The Weed Brew is a large plastic tub. You flip the lid off, you get your weed matter, and you toss it into the Weed Brew. Weed Brew has just weeds and water. That's it. Pop the lid back on, and the Weed Brew will do the rest. Got a little bit of rubbish, a bit of weed and waste that we're no longer going to be using. This cucumber's a little old for me now, so this won't go to waste. It'll be actually utilized as food by the compost crew. Let's go see them now. All the garden waste that is edible and delicious, it's too good to just throw away into a compost, comes to these guys. And as you can see, they love it. They absolutely adore their produce. So we've got non-toxic weeds. They can come to these guys and they eat it up, seeds and all. And it's a perfect way to manage that transference of seed and waste and weed in your garden. But what we're left with, once they're finished with it, is this. This here is what we're looking to harvest. And this is a combination of sugarcane mulch and guinea pig waste. And this is pelletized manure. It's perfect for your garden. It's not too intense in terms of heat. So you can just toss that into another bundle of sugarcane mulch, and before you know it, you've got a perfectly distributed amount of fertilizer in your mulch, and it is absolute gold. And I would have to say it's probably one of the reasons why the veg patch is in such a thriving state as it is. It gets so much easier when you have drip irrigation or some kind of structured irrigation process in place. If you've got to come out and set up a hose and set up a sprinkler and do all of that each day, it leaves us a little bit more likely to not get it done. Plants thrive on consistency. Every drop matters, and the Shine Wellbeing irrigation system supports using water efficiently in the garden. This drip irrigation, as you can see, is running, and it has the emitters, and the emitters drop out the water at the point where the plant needs it most, and you can't go past drip irrigation. So if that's something that you think is going to be of benefit to your garden, it's really quite simple, and we are going to have some videos coming up very shortly on how to install your own drip irrigation systems. And the other thing that's important to consider with irrigation is that your plants cannot access nutrients without water. Your plant's root systems run sort of similar to a straw, and so if the nutrients aren't in a liquidish form for them to access, they really can't draw them up and pull them through. And that's why you want to have consistent water, especially if you garden in a climate that's warm. It'll give you water where it matters, and that means the root zone. The root zone requires the water. The leaves really don't require anything like that. So you don't need to be watering overhead. It's the least efficient way to access water to your plants. And so when you put your drippers on, it goes straight into the root zone, making that water available to the plant, making the nutrients liquid, and so they just, like a straw, suck it up and have very little stress and get access to everything that they need. Think about the beauty, the element of what lights you up. The Shine Wellbeing patch is a direct representation of what I love. I love formality and structure and the traditional sort of style kitchen gardens, that had some jazz about them, a little bit of vitality and energy as opposed to just production. And I'm not saying it's wrong to just go with production. Of course it's not. You should go with whatever lights you up, and that's the point. Know yourself, and then you can grow and munch and have a great time. So design what it is that's in your heart and bring it to life. You'll never look back. And my final tip to a successful and thriving patch is to grow beautiful things, things that light your heart up and also help to support the ecosystem, like these dahlias. The bees absolutely love them. They can't get enough of them. And then they're just opposite, they're just opposite the cucumbers, which is going to help when it comes to the pollination side of things. So a higher yield is going to come from some of your edibles because you've got some of these more beautiful and precious sort of flowering plants in your patch. So I hope that you got something out of today's video. If you did, I'm so very grateful that you're here, and thank you very much for joining me, crew. I really enjoy making these videos for you, and I hope that it helps you to avoid some of the mistakes that I made back in the beginning. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for joining me, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. Shine on.